One. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Patreon version of my in-depth look into perspectives and formations of forms and foreshortening. Okay, so this is gonna be like a three-part series in a sense when it comes to perspective. Okay, so today we're gonna be focusing on forms, and then we're gonna add forms to perspective, or at least perspective with foreshortening. It kind of goes either which way, and all that great stuff. I will be your host today, Jace Reaver, and we are going to be focusing on that. So, number one thing I always preach on my YouTube channels are usually are usually the forms. Forms are the most important thing you must learn other than perspective. I think we should have started with perspective first off when I started the channel, but I think it was best just to start off on something a little bit more easier to understand, to digest, and all that great stuff. Now, forms. What are forms? That is number one thing we need to explain. What is that? So we get more in depth in this. So I already have a definition for this, so you guys can look it up yourself, but I'm going to read it anyway. Forms are the visible shape of a configuration of something. I'm going to put it up on the screen if I edit this in, or what the case may be. Usually it's just a fancier or just a very specific way of saying your shapes. That's basically what form is. It's basically your squares. Let me right here, your squares, your triangles, your circles, your rhombuses, all these type of things. You know, these are your diamonds, like this. That calls for a shape, or your hearts. This is somewhat of shape because it has to do, even though it's not the traditional type shape that you are dealing with when you're in like a kindergarten or what case may be, it is a shape at best. Alright, you can virtually make anything into a type of shape, whether it be your arm, your body, anything with your body parts, to your like your car, to a building or anything. Everything is mainly made out of shapes. Even when it doesn't seem to be, it is. Some shapes are a little bit more easier to detect than others, and all that great stuff. But 9 times out of 10, anything that you see is made of a basic shape, whether it be visually or just obviously on a physical level. Sometimes, a visual level, you don't even have to physically touch it to see it. You can just have a good idea. Like, for instance, if you think of a tree, you kind of think of like a triangle and a stump, pretty much. It's not a perfect tree. This is not a tree per se, but you can think of it in that sense, that form with the stem, and then you put like little Christmas tree stuff, depending on what type of tree you want to deal with. Since it is the new year, Happy New Year to all of you, and I know you had fun with your Christmases, even though last year was kind of insane, but we're not going to talk about that. But yeah, so form is something you guys should focus on. This is something I stress a lot. I suggest you guys do some warm-ups with me. We're going to do some warm-ups, and then we're going to move on from some shapes down to foreshortening to perspective, because the reason I'm moving from perspective before foreshortening is because it's just giving you the ultimate idea of what that does. Perspective is more constructive. It's more, perspective with the horizon line. It is more constructive. It is more intuitive in that way. So bear with me. Don't worry. We'll get down to the nitty-gritty. This is going to be a pretty long session. I think this is going to be about, what, an hour or two or so? We'll see. I'm going to try as edit this as possible to stay on track. If I do get off track, I'll just edit it out, or what the case may be. So pretty much when we do anything with shape, today we're just gonna focus with the square. I'm not gonna use any other shape like that because unless I have to. The square is something that we commonly use in all situations, and I think the circle as well. Circle and squares are usually what's most common in art, especially when constructing a head or trying to keep head positioned. Like, for instance, if I draw this head here and I put it in here, then you got our head and you got our ears. Now we put a square, and what that square does, it gives you a sense of perspective. You see that? See? like it's not a perfect square. I'm not trying to make it perfect, but I'm just getting you understanding that we use squares sometimes even to construct heads under that situation, depending on what it is. But that is 9 times out of 10 the reason. But circles are important, and squares, because especially on a 3D space, because what I'm going to teach you is keep things 3D as much as possible, because if you look at something 2D and transfer it to 3D or 3D to 2D, it makes it more easier to deal with 2D, because 3D is a lot more complicated thing to deal with, especially if you're talking about forms with values and colors and stuff like that, but we're not focusing on that. But that's just something you guys should keep in mind. If you guys are familiar with anything called Blender or any type of 3D like model or video game like game development software, learning things in 3D form is something important you should take in and understand. So, for instance, we go here, here, and we keep things like pretty 3D like in a sense, because if we practice our 3D-ness with our drawings, we can have better results in that stage. See, I don't know why my pen is kind of acting weird, so that's why it's gonna be kind of a little bit sketchy. It's a brand new pen, so I'm getting used to it. I think I have to change the settings for the pen, but right now that's not important. So we're gonna just make a lot of random squares. And number one thing when you're making your 3D squares based on your forms, be sure to keep things parallel as much as possible. If you don't know what parallels means, I'm pretty sure you learned this in school, and probably in 3rd grade or so, but I'm going to just give you the jargon of it. Parallel is pretty much two lines that does not intersect. They do not intersect at all, but they are the same length 9 times out of 10. They have to be equal in length. Not equal in thickness, like width, but just literally length. Length, not width. You gotta be very aware of that. Length, not width. I think width may have or will play a part in it, but then again, 9 times out of 10, we're not gonna be talking about. I keep saying 9 times out of 10. I'm sorry, but that is something that you guys gotta keep in mind. Keep your squares and your shapes parallel to each other. If you keep it parallel, it will look natural as much as possible. Even if it's a little bit distorted, it will still resemble that of a competent square or form, that is the shape. So that's something you guys should learn. Just practice with me a little bit. We're just doing some warm-ups so we can get those jitters out, and when we get to the fun stuff, or at least the hard stuff, depending on who's watching this, we will see where we go with that. Alright, so we're going to make a rectangle pretty much the same. We're going to keep going with this, and we're going to keep things pretty parallel in that sense, because parallel pretty much just means keep things equal, so we can use it to our advantage. This is going to be important very, very soon in the lesson when it comes to perspective and using something called the horizon line. I'll explain to that and get to that later, but we're just doing a few sketches. Just sketch with me a little bit here and there. Just squares. It could be squares. It could be what do you call it? Rectangles, if you want. You don't have to be like have to do squares you don't want to. It just has to resemble that of a 4-shaded or 4-sided shape. I would go with a triangle more like this, but since we're not using that, we'll use that on another day. Or the circle, for instance. You can use a circle. I'll go with the circle as well, because with the circle, you might be wondering, how do you make a circle 3D other than just making a circle? Usually you can just use a lisp. A lisp is pretty much like a curvature type line that goes around the subject that you're using, whether it be a robot or whether it be a car or a person, because ellipses can give it that 3D space, that 3D sense that you may need, and all that good stuff. So just be aware of that. This is something you guys will be using a lot when it comes to constructing heads, and I suggest this is something you guys should practice a lot, because you'll be surprised on where you put your lisp will literally determine what the angle you'll be looking at your ball or your circle, depending on what you refer to it, or sphere. I think that's the most better term in the art world. So like literally, I think you guys should take some time. Okay, so like you see how I make the ellipse look like this, like it's look like it's going this way, because what makes a lisp easier to understand, please take this note of this. When you're doing your lisp, don't make it completely connect, because I think that what makes the ball look more flat than it does look 3D. Because what this space, this open space that I'm leaving here, or it doesn't have to be right in the middle, it could be in the side too. The space could be here, it could be here, but you have to make a lisp or a curved line that makes sense, that your brain can fill in the blanks. It's more of an illusionary thing. Like you can make an illusion in your mind that even though it does not connect, you can tell that thing is curving towards that very thing you're staring at. So the curving of the line and it's that this gap gives it that sense of this is a 3D ball. It is 3D. My brain is telling me that it feels 3D, it looks 3D, because if I were to connect it, it will still look 3D, don't get me wrong, but it will still look kind of flat because it loses its, I guess its depth, pretty much. Its depth on that that 3D sense, if that makes sense to you, or anything like that. So you can do this with squares too, in a sense, but it's not that needed because a square is like a very hard shape, like form. So, and the lines really pretty much speaks for itself in its own way. Because putting lines here just pretty much makes you think you're looking at a more of a box, or it is a more 3D. Okay, so there's that. All right. So I'm gonna just end this here. All right. So we're gonna move on. I think we got a little bit of our and also to give more depth before I get in, I'm not gonna mention like cross hatching like that. I'm not gonna get in full. Sorry about that. I got distracted by something. I'm not gonna get in full depth in cross hatching or anything because it's not something I practice all that much. But it is important to know because it can help with like the concept of like shading and stuff like that. Now, even though there's not much of a difference there because of the angle, you can tell where the light is coming from, and because you can tell where the light's coming from, and you make sense of where the light's coming from, it gives it that, like I said, depth again. So that's something you guys should be very aware of. See how it looks more, because the light, I'm not really talking about light, but I'm just giving you an example of light and giving depth. And one thing is good to do is keep a line going through in the same direction. You can also have a crosshatch in that sense, but just keeping it simple makes it easier to understand what you're trying to do. Alright, so let's jump on to the next thing. We're going to jump on to, actually I'm going to make this another layer, so just deleting it. Alright, so we're going to jump into foreshortening. I don't know what's wrong with my pen. I don't know what's wrong with it. I think I need to configure it soon, but I can't get to that right now. So wait, maybe I need to configure it. I'll configure it in a second, but maybe a little bit later. So we're on foreshortening, on the topic of that. Now, what is foreshortening? Foreshortening is to portray or show an object or view as closer than it is, or as having less depth or distance as an effect of perspective or the angle of vision. Pretty much, in layman's terms, big thing looks huge as something looks far away in the behind. So the best way to do this is to give sense of depth. Let's start with our square. Let's just start with our forms again. Okay, follow along with me. Make it easy. Make sure that your lines are parallel, meaning that they are the same length. Even if they don't seem to be, try to make them as equal as possible. They don't have to be in this, like, you can make it thick on this side and make it still thin, but if it's long as it's parallel, which I'll stress this a lot for this topic, if it's parallel, you can have a better looking square. Even if it distorts a little, you can still get away with it. But if it doesn't, and you make a line like this, let's just say for instance I make it like this, and then like this, and like this, like if it's so offbeat, it's gonna look off, right? Oh, that actually looks pretty decent, to be honest, but it's gonna look off and distorted. But since I made it my mission to make the lines as equal as possible, and I think to keep things in line, I think you guys should practice doing something with lines like this. Try to keep it in line with the line that you just made. Try to be as fast as possible, but also don't wobble. Try not to wobble. Try to be as accurate as possible. This is really important, because the more better you get at making your lines straighter, the easier it is to draw things, trust me. And also you should learn to do your lines, as I said, and learn how to do your S curves. You can see that, there you go, like, see, it has to be more smooth. As you can see closely at this compared to this seems a lot more smoother, right? But if you can see these crooked, like, what do you call it, stabilization, like, S's that seem synthetic and weird and strange. If you get something like this is something you need to practice on. Or sometimes it's not even you. You can tell that the issue at hand could be, I'll say, like a settings issue 9 times out of 10. Like, my stabilization here is like a 10. So it's not that bad, but yet not that good. So I'll put it at probably a 15, probably a 30. And if it still doesn't work, I think I probably should lessen it more. Maybe there's too much restriction, because remember, the higher the number of the stabilization, the more it's gonna try to correct you. Like, it's gonna correct you like real seriously. But like for instance, let me put it at, let's just say, I think this is 0. I put it at 0, right? See how crooked everything is, even though, you see that? Since it's trying to mimic the idea of a marker or a pencil, it's going to be very frustrating to do this, right? It's going to be really frustrating to keep things, because I'm doing as fast as possible and being as straight as possible, but it's saying that my curves are just too wobbly. And this is something you guys can practice. Try as much as possible. Think about it. Try as much as possible to keep your stabilization at 0. This is for only practicing purposes. And see how straight you can make your lines on 0 pretty much. And see how straight and straight and straight and straight. And just do it for 9 hours. Do it for like 5-10 minutes straight. And see how much of a difference from your first straight on the 0 stabilization compared to the 100th time of doing your 0 and to your 0 stabilization over 100 times. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's not gonna look all that drastically different, but just because that you had to do that exercise and try to straighten yourself, you then put it at probably like a 15, 20, like I said, on the stabilization, and then try to keep things straight. And you'll be surprised, with the help of the stabilization, you feel even more straighter in your work. You see how straight that is? I'm not holding a button or anything, you know, so you can keep things straight. It puts like a weird like weight on your skills on being more precise in that sense. So, all right, back to the square at hand. So we have our square that is parallel from each other, right? You can do the math thing that they do with this, with the equal signs with the triangles like this to keep things if you like that, if that helps in any way, that'd be cool. And now you go like this, right? And then we go straight down, straight down. one thing that people make a mistake when it comes to doing 3D forms is that they try to slant their drawing. They try to slant it and it looks kind of weird. You don't want to do that. Make sure that it's strongly like straight, just straight down. Don't worry about it being accurate, because it usually be accurate when you go straight up and straight down, right? And then like this. This is where parallel comes in. You gotta be as parallel as possible. Or you can try fix it by stretching out a little bit and try to keep things as equal as possible. That is the goal. Because once you make things, like if you can get all your forms, or especially your squares or your triangles, any hard shape type forms, if you can get them, or any four-sided forms or anything like that, like your oxalis, I can't say it, the oxagon or your rhombuses and anything like that, you will have a better chance of keeping things more equal in that sense. And because we made it 3D, then we're going to make it foreshortened. So since this is pretty not big nor small, we have to make another square somewhere around in this position. This is going to be falling in your cone of vision. I'll explain that probably either this video or a following video, because that's something you guys don't have to really concern yourself with right now. Just follow along with me. But that's something you guys will be learning from me in the Patreon very soon. So you make a square right here that's smaller. You see that? See how small that is? But because it's small, it makes this appear big, right? But because it appears big, and I made it further away from the angle it is, it makes it seem like it's far away. Always remember that in foreshortening. You're portraying it as to be an object in a certain view, right? I'll use, like, let's just say Luffy from One Piece. He throws his whole fist at the screen to give that big effect on how they drew. I don't think Toei is the one that drew that draws the characters or anything like that. But I can't remember the artist's name for One Piece, the main creator. But if you can see right here, like this fist, right here, pretend this is, it's not the best fist, but pretend this is Luffy from One Piece. Those of you who are fans of One Piece, I'm pretty sure some of you are. If not, that's perfectly fine. You can still use this as a reference. You don't even need to know the show to do this. But imagine this is the fist from One Piece, right? And usually Luffy is made of rubber, right? Because he can stretch. And because he can stretch, he can throw his whole arm. And because he throws his whole arm when throwing a punch at enemies or a case may be, they make sure that his body, Luffy, I'm going to say this is Luffy right here, this straw hat. I'm going to try and make a hat here. No, I'm going to try it again. I think it's hat like this. Actually, let me make it thinner so I can, like that. And then you make a hat, right? And then here's Luffy. This is his head. And then his body. I'm not going to make his actual body, but this is just a reference. And then he's like in the air, and he's like, his arm is like here, but his whole arm is like this, right? Better yet, let's even take this even further, because just throwing it like that is going to give it not the distortion it deserves. See that? Now, even better, I'm going to erase this. Erase his body, right? Because I always use this example all the time when I'm doing my live streams. For those of you who ask me this question all the time, how do you deal with foreshortening? Like, foreshortening is a form of layering. That's pretty much what it is. When you layer your foreshortening, if you get good at like layering, you probably might get good at foreshortening. But there's some things you have to keep in mind, because even though I'm just literally putting this on top of the character, you have to give it that depth. So, like, for instance, the arm doesn't go straight at people. People think when you're throwing a punch, it goes straight. That's not true. It actually curves. into a straight line in a sense. You're like, if you stick your arm out, like literally out, like this, it's gonna look straight. But when you're throwing a punch, it actually curves first before it gets all straightened. That's just life. That's literally what it does. So that's something you should take in mind. So when you're drawing a character, don't draw your character with a fist that's going straight. Draw your character with an arm, like this one. See how I'm giving it its depth by... Oh, also use the coil method. This is something I didn't mention. The coil method is pretty much the ellipse, but the difference is instead of using just one little line, you're doing a bunch of coils, or I think it's called the ellipse method or called the coil method, depending on who you're asking. But it's pretty much fall in the same category. So when you do the whole fist thing, that's funny. When you do the whole fist thing, make sure that the fist, oops, back to the red, right, and then you gotta circle up. Oops, am I in eraser mode? Yeah, there we go. There we go. Now it's much easier. Now we gotta make a circle here. Right? I think I made a loop. There we go. And then, oh, actually no, I'll make it even more. I'll put it on a 25 or a 30. I think 25 is fine. Oops. Oh wait, the keyboard is acting up. Okay. So anyway, we'll make a circle, and then we put a line here. I know you guys are, I taught you guys heads before on YouTube, so you can always refer back on that on YouTube. I'll make a in-depth video on heads in the future. Trust me, I will, because it's gonna be like probably 2 to 3 hours long. So that's something you guys can look forward for, right? And then what you can do is with the head is like do this thing where this, because pretty much when you're drawing heads, you're using a form of perspective, form of foreshortening to make it look a certain way or seem to be a certain way, so you can look for what you need to look for, so you don't have to worry about not getting what you need for the shape or a case may be. Let me go back again. Okay. Circle. And then remember I told you about the list tool, or method, pretty much. Make sure it's in line, and then next thing you know, it's like this, right? And then like that. Like, this is a form of foreshortening, because now we're looking under his chin in that form, and then you make a circle, well, for the ears, and then you take the neck like that, and then we tried to connect everything to make sense of it all, so you can put it like that. Yeah, that's a form of foreshortening, so we have a better understanding. Oops, we have a better understanding on where that's going. Let's see. See that? Okay. Alright, like that. There you go. That's a form of foreshortening. I will get in more depth into this because I know you guys was waiting for something like this to happen, but I was not sure how the Patreon was going to be once I started on YouTube. But I'll have a video out on heads very soon, I promise. Now, since we have a good understanding of foreshortening, like I did it on the last video, so you guys can look at some examples I did. I did explain a little bit of my process on the YouTube version, but that's more condensed in 7 minutes than it is what you're getting here. So that's something to be aware of. But this is just pretty much recapping what I did last week, and then integrating with today's perspective, mainly on the idea of perspective. So it's always making things appear more further than what it is. I always use feet or hands mostly, or like the body. For instance, if I were to draw a head, again, make body, I'm just making a quick gesture, and then like this, and then I have a big hand like that, right? And then I have another hand like this, but it's like kind of winding up that for a punch in that form, right? Okay, and then the leg would be, well, actually the knee will be like this, right? And then the other knee would be like this. Just to be clear, I'm not trying to create a character or gain depth in something. I'm just literally giving you a sense of and then you can make this fist, you can make the hand open like she's grabbing out for us in some form, right? I'm calling it she because I'm getting a like curvy body anyway. But that's something you should do. You can do. Make feet. In a way, I'm doing foreshortening as we speak with the feet. And then the fists are like this. Right? There you go. I'll get into a video of doing hands as well soon. I'm just putting these hands here just for the sake of the understanding. So, and always remember that the body, whatever you're trying to give emphasis to, like probably the hand that's reaching out and the wind up of the fist, remember the fist must be smaller, relatively smaller than everything else because it's the most furthest back thing, but not that small, but small enough to say, okay, the body's big, the body's medium size, the hand is at the most max, which you should make it even more bigger to exaggerate it, and then you have a better understanding of that. Something huge. And then to make sure that it's coming out instead of just some random hand, make sure that the shoulder or the arm width are like coiled. You don't have to be constantly coiling, but it has to have that coiling method. And make sure that it's not straight. Make sure it's like curved so it goes with the flow with the character at mind. So this is how it can help your foreshortenings. Always make sure that your foreshortenings make sense to the character at hand so you don't have to worry about that later. Good stuff. I know it's not the best reference right now, and usually I make good references in these cases. But this is something you guys have to learn and practice on your own in that form. So, it is what it is. So just giving her hair for no reason whatsoever. It is what it is. So that's pretty much foreshortening. It's just literally making something big that is huge in the foreground, and the foreground compared to being into the background. Actually, better yet, I can make this even, because what you can do is put a dot here, put it like this, and then make a small square this way, right? And then erase the circle that you made. Just erase it. Okay. Oh, and also, to make things appear more clear, this is something I didn't mention. This is really important, and that you will be using this, is that when you make your lines thicker and bigger when they're up close, because it seems closer, because things that are usually more bold seem more closer, and the thing that's further away has to be thin. Don't make it as thick as the drawing, because it gives it a sense of depth in that sense as well. So always look out for that as well. That's something that most people don't really think about when drawing characters or just starting to begin, I'm saying. So that's something you guys should keep in mind. There you go. Now, or we can do the same thing with a circle. We can make it big. Right, and then like this. right? And then make the circle seem so much more further away. You can see that, like, even when you put a line, somewhat of a vanishing point, which I'll get into that soon, it seems much further away. Much further away. You see that? That's how you do foreshortening. Because I didn't make the line so thick compared to the big one. Because when it's big, it has to be thick. Alright, so let's move on to the next one. So we're going to move on to pretty much perspective. And I'm going to explain what perspective is in 2 seconds. Let me just get the definition so you guys can see this. Okay, so for perspective, the art of drawing solid objects on a two-dimensional surface so as to give the right impression of their height, width, depth, and position in relation to each other when viewed from a particular point. So, for perspective is pretty much anything from top, bottom, outside to side, but more inwards. So the best way to keep perspective, and other than just making a bunch of foreshortened shapes or slash forms, is that you need something called a the horizon line. In the art theory, is a horizon line that runs across the paper or canvas to represent the viewer's eye level and delegate where the sky meets the ground. So how to paint the horizon. So I'm going to make a horizon line right now. You guys follow along with me. I think I said that word wrong. I think it was delegate. Okay, so I don't know if you guys, well, you can use any type of drawing software for this, but I suggest if you have Clip Studio Paint or you have Premiere Pro, not Premiere Pro, I think Photoshop, you should have something called a line tool, which is really important to have. I think nearly any drawing software has this type of thing in most cases. I'm pretty sure. If you don't, then you just gotta try your best. Okay, here it is. The straight line tool. These other tools we won't be using like that for a good reason, because they're not all that important. But the straight line tool is something that you guys need, or it may be under a different name for Photoshop or any other software you're using, where it be I think it's called Krita or Krita, I think it's called, and the other one's called Fire. There we go. So we have it more straight, and just let you guys know this is digital art, so like don't be all that surprised if I made it more straighter than it would. I would just use my own hand, which I usually do, but like since we're trying to make it very technical and get straight to the point of it, don't worry about being too accurate with the line. It's just you have to, well, the straightness. If you want really straight and you're a perfectionist like I am, either use the shift tool, the straight line, and hold shift to get it, or use, I think, the same exact method for Photoshop, and I think it might be different for Mac. I don't know the keyboards because I'm not familiar with it all that much, but I'm pretty sure it works pretty much the same. I know those of you who are doing traditional, you have to use a ruler, and that's perfectly fine. You can use a ruler on your digital desktop as well if you don't have a straight line tool or any type of line tool, which I will doubt that you won't have one for your digital thing. It would be kind of weird if you didn't, but hey, I think that happens. Whatever software you're using. But yeah, so we have a horizon line. Like I said, a horizon line is literally our eye level with the horizon, pretty much. This is where our eyes are looking at. This is important. Our eyes are looking at literally here. That whole line where you're standing or where you're facing is the whole horizon. This happens all the time when you're walking, when you're out. It doesn't matter. Everything has a horizon line. Depending on where you're sitting, depending on where you're standing, depending if you're in the air or underground, it doesn't matter. Everything has a horizon line, so your eyes rest where your eyes are staring at, and where it is this. This is the line. Now, what do we do with this line? Well, first thing, we made our horizon line. The second thing we have to do is make a VP, which is known as a vanishing point. So what is a vanishing point? A vanishing point, the point at which receding parallel lines viewed in perspective appear to converge. So this is where the lines actually meet. That's where the horizon line actually truly meets, when they converge. They're not, I don't think they're parallel, to be honest, but they do, because anything parallel does not meet. So I'm going to go on a limb, if I'm not wrong here, and say that these are non-parallel lines, but they're lines that meet in the same center. You can put here, you can put the line here, or we put the line here, but we're going to focus on 1 point perspective. 1 point perspective. That's very important. We're not doing 2-pointer or 3-pointer. I think just sticking on 1 and making it simple for you guys makes more sense than I would originally. So with doing 3 or 2 in one video on YouTube. So we're only focusing on 1 point only. So we're going to put the point maybe right here. I'm going to put dead in the center. Pretty much dead in the center. And we can go about this a few ways. There's, I think, 2 or 3 ways. I think there's about 2. So if you're over the horizon line, that means you're high up in the air. If you're under the horizon line, you're pretty much either under it or worm level. So like you're at the bottom, like at the floor, and this one's at the top of the sky. Or you're probably sitting on the floor, depending on the way it's constructed. So always remember that when you're over the line, you're at top. Excuse me. When you're over the line, you're on top, and then when you're at bottom line, you're pretty much at worm level or eye height, or less than eye height, if anything, depending on how far the field is. So what we're gonna do is that the first method we can try this is, I think, not the poor man's way, but you can do this method. So we're gonna use squares, as again, as I said, is we're gonna make a square, make them parallel, make sure that they're parallel to each other. That is something really important to know. And you can see that there's a slant. That's very important. Make sure you're straight as possible. Actually, you can use as much as I wouldn't recommend this is just for learning purposes, you can use the straight line tool if you want. It'll keep things more constructed in that sense. Is that we're trying to keep everything in line with this point. So what's funny about this is you can make as many squares as you want. It could be also circles and squares, but I think that's a little bit more trickier, because given that circles don't have a certain edge to themselves. Hold on. Like that. Keep things 100%. So we're gonna pull this out like this, keep it slanted in that form, and put down, and never try to, don't ever try to compensate for this for the actual like side of the angle that the square is going. You can always bring it back. See how it looks kind of slant there. You see how it's not. There we go. Okay. Not perfect, but it's gonna have to do for now. So to do this, to keep them all in line with this circle here, what we have to do is that we have to line up lines. Actually, I'm gonna get more 3D. like that. And look at that, it doesn't look that parallel. Okay. Oops. And then you got, oh, you see what happened there? I didn't make them straight. Straight like this, right? Straight like down, right? And then there we go. Oh, what? Why is it? Okay, there we go. I was like acting. It was acting a little funny. Okay. See that? Now, let's just get this over with this, and then put this over here. Put this over here, and put it over here. Now, you have to always make sure when you connect them to the current conversion point, you have to make sure that the line isn't crossed, meaning like either behavioral reasons or yourself as a person or anything like that. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna do this. Okay, there we go. I didn't have time to actually clean out this one. This seems okay, but then again, over here, it needs more oomph. Men over here, well, they did pretty well. But then again, these two over here did pretty well. Like, they didn't too distort from anything except this bottom one. It always eludes me when drawing this. Especially at the rectangle, it always throws me off because I'm not used to seeing a bottom of a rectangle. I've seen many times I see the bottom of a square, circle, and all that stuff. So now, because we used the vanishing point to construct, not really construct, but we constructed our squares after, and then made the vanishing point the next place to go. So we erased the end tails, and then we got to this point. Now we're going to use a different method. In a sense, I think I can do it, but let me see. Like this. Okay. Okay. Alright, so we got that out of the way. And now what we're going to do is copy. And then we're going to paste it. What this entails is that you're going to have to turn. I think anyone can do this now, because now Photoshop is more accessible than ever. You can flip this canvas like this. Now we just pretty much made a hallway, like a traffic line. This is something you guys should learn. We made a traffic line pretty much on that note. You guys didn't even know it, but we did a great job with that. Now, we're going to figure out how we're going to construct anything in this situation. Give me 2 seconds. Okay, so how do we make this work? So we're going to make a square. I'm gonna separate this from the thing just because I need to erase. I'm gonna make it red. Or probably green. Okay. Oh, okay. And this is something you oh wait. Hold on. Yeah, and you can make the lines like this. I forgot to do this. Okay. There we go. Now everything's pretty much equal from that. Well, and almost everything's equal. There we go. Now everything seems like it has more depth itself. Now the next best thing for me to do is to make a red square, and then what we'll do, pull this up, pull this up, pull this up. I would pull another one up, but it's kind of just in the way, so. Okay. Okay, like that, and then we come down. There we go. Oops. There we go. Now we have a 3D box, as you guys can see, because we follow along with the lines, because you have to follow along with the lines. That's how we do things. It just makes things a lot more easier to find them. Let me do this one. And much more further away. Right? And then you pull it here and put it right here. Okay, like that. And then we pull it up like this. Pull it up like this. Right? And then you can actually connect these in the back. No. I said connect. I said connect. Alright, so. And then we erase this back end. Oops. See that? Now that makes things a lot more easier to read. This is something you guys should be aware of when it comes to the lines. The lines are your friend. Use them as best as you can. Like for instance, I'll even do this one on top. I'll do another square on top since we're focusing mainly on squares. Like this, like this. Oh, and I'm going to teach you how to do, in future videos, I'm going to teach you guys how to do, like character investigations, not investigations, more like character designing. I'm gonna get more in depth into that with those videos, so you have something to look forward to. Okay, I'm trying to get this to work. There we go. I think it's a little bit slanted in its own right, somewhere around here, but I think it can look better. Now let me try to. I don't think drawing any more circles will make any sense. I think that will make total nonsense out of the situation already. So I'm going to ignore that one. So I'm pretty sure you guys understood what perspective is from this point. Perspective is usually using the line at some point. that can help you with what you're trying to do. Okay, so to put anything in perspective, be aware of your horizon line. Your horizon line is your friend, same thing as your grid paper. Your grid paper will help you. I will be jumping into, I'll say, like 2 to 3 hours when it comes to these kind. Use it in the next second point or 2-point perspective in the following video. But since this is technically the first video, I'm gonna try something. I'm trying something new with longer videos and sessions. But you guys tell me, do you think this helped you guys in any way? Please let me know. And as my new patrons, if it's too long, or I was driving too long, or whatever case may be, feedback helps. I might be pulling a poll, or whatever case may be, based on how this video was presented. If it was crappy, it was fun, it was helpful in any which way, please let me know, because your feedback helps, so I can, study and research more on what's more effective for you guys out there. If perspective, it has been something that's been hard for you, it definitely has been for me. Still is up to this point, but I try my best to present this to you guys as best as possible. So please let me know if this was helpful, if you learned what a vanishing point is, what a perspective is, or what form is, or anything else, or foreshortening. Has it helped you in any which way? Has it been helpful? Please let me know. So see you guys in the next one. Look out for my next video on YouTube, my crash course version of this. This is the long version of what you see here on YouTube, and me just explaining my process throughout this one course in any which way as you can see. I have to make some type of thumbnail around this, but we'll figure it out soon. But thank you guys for being awesome and being very patient with me along this journey. Tell me if anything I can do better. So with that said, have a great night, guys, and keep safe, keep plus ultra, and you can check out my other social media on TikTok, on TikTok, or on Instagram, or any other social media platforms that are available. That's in the descriptions below, on my Patreon or on my YouTube. So with that said, I'm out. There, guys.